Hi, welcome to a new episode of the Mayor's Table. I'm Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. With me today are some very important figures here in our community, our first responders. We're going to talk a little bit about an adaptive response to a community issue surrounding alcohol abuse. And while there's a lot of topics out there that have been on the table for a long time and discussing ways and strategies in helping kind of combat, I want to say, alcohol abuse here in our community, and really the impact that it's had on the public budget and how much money we spend towards police and fire and ambulance and sobering centers and jails and judges and all the things that come together under that umbrella that obviously these gentlemen are very familiar with. So let me introduce my guests here today. First, we have Captain Brandon Hebbe with the Farmington Fire Department. We have Chief David Burke with the Farmington Fire Department, Chief Steve Hebbe with the Farmington Police Department, and Lieutenant Casey Malone with the Farmington Police Department. Thank you guys for joining us and kind of talking about this issue that I know a number of our community members have a lot of questions about. And they're always asking me, what are we doing about the problem, whether it deals around street inebriates, whether it deals around the location of the roof, or down subject calls that we see so much of here between fire and police. So thanks again for joining us. But let's kind of start first with the Alternative Response Unit. The Daily Times, I believe, did an article on that here a few weeks back, but I think it'd be good for people to kind of get a refresher and understanding of what the Alternative Response Unit is, kind of what the history of it was, what brought the idea forward, and maybe where it stands today. So I'll start over here with Captain Brandon Hurd. Brandon, tell us a little bit about the ARU unit.
Well, the ARU began in July of this last summer. It started as a collaborative effort between the fire and the police department, as well as San Juan Regional EMS. We started meeting in April and just tried to come up with some different ideas and try to put our minds together on how more effectively and more efficiently we can handle the down subject type calls for service. That's how it started. Our first day was July 11th, and we've been rolling Wednesday through Saturday since July 11th. The hours of operation have been 9 to 7. Here recently with the time change, we've adjusted that from 9 to 7 to 8 to 6.
Okay. And to be specific, when we talk about a collaborative effort between police and fire, the ARU unit is actually a police squad car, correct, with a firefighter and a police officer in it.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And so right now we're on a pilot program as we kind of see whether or not this helps us. But what's the goal of the ARU unit as opposed to us just sending out when dispatch calls out for a down subject, an officer and a firefighter? What is the ultimate goal?
So the ultimate goal, and Chief, correct me if you'd like to add anything at all, but the ultimate goal was the initial response for these type of calls was a police officer, and then if the police officer couldn't make it within a certain time frame, within the 20-minute time frame because they're busy doing other calls for service, then a fire engine and an ambulance would get dispatched to that down subject call type. So we were looking at a more efficient way and a more effective way to do that, allowing police resources, fire resources, and EMS resources to be available for other calls for service. So we went from that 3-unit call type to a 1-unit call type, combining police and fire resources together, where we provide the police service there where they can check any legal concerns that may come up. We also have the fire individuals there, or the fire representative there, who can handle any basic life support concerns that the person may have a medical issue. So, and then we can call for additional resources for ambulance, or we can call another fire engine if we need to. But we can get that person to, they may have a medical concern, they may have a concern where they may want to go to the sobering center, something of that nature, and we can figure out what best way to route them to handle their needs and take care of what concerns they might have.
So Chief, just in regards to what Captain Hurd mentioned, we're freeing up resources by kind of laser focusing a 1-unit response team so that we're not having to send out a fire truck, we're not having to send out EMS, it's 1 unit. It is still 1 officer who's out there. But what is, and as we look towards the future for this, what do you kind of see the ARU unit or that program becoming for this community?
Well, there's a couple of paths I envision for it, but primarily in this time frame we're acquiring the data so that we can make informed decisions moving forward. Transport needs are always going to be a priority, and I think we are, with this particular pilot model that we're evaluating right now, we're able to do that disposition-based model where this unit can transport to the sobering center, and it's freeing up other officers, other ambulances, and the fire apparatus, obviously. We are not decreasing service level. If there is, if the individual does have a medical concern, we have trained personnel that can address that and call for the additional resources. So it really seems like at this point it's a very positive program, and I envision it moving forward along the same line as long as the data continues to come in the way it is. I'd like to extend it 7 days a week so that there isn't times of the day or times of the week when fire apparatus have to manage these type of calls. We'd like to see as much coverage during that time frame as possible. Basically, to answer your question, the path that we're on seems to be a successful path, and we'd like to grow it a little bit from its current delivery model into probably more of a 7-day-a-week type delivery model.
Well, I think what will stand out for people on the street when they see those down subjects, and of course we've all seen them, and it's no longer going to be a fire engine out there. It's going to be a fire engine with maybe other resources. It's more than likely just going to be that one resource. Chief Hebbe, and I know your involvement in this, obviously it frees up officer time when you're not having to have, well, I mean, I don't know, guys. I mean, let's just say that the biggest number I've heard is 51 calls in a day for down subjects. Is that still the top number?
Yes, sir.
So let's just picture 51 times in a day that we're required to send somebody out to deal with somebody who's so intoxicated they can't stand up. That takes a lot of police resources, a lot of fire resources. So from the police side, and one of the things I think is interesting is bringing in that paramedic standpoint to be there with the officer. Now they can assess the individual, and that officer in the past, or even now, when we pick up a down subject, they have to take them to the sobering center, and they have to wait until the sobering center processes them medically before that officer is even allowed to leave, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, now he can be assessed there on the scene in that one unit. When you show up to the sobering center, if that's the decided destination for them, they already have that initial medical review, and the officer doesn't have to wait. Is that right?
That's correct.
What other benefits are there to, and we've kind of talked really broadly, but from a police standpoint, and having this type of program in place, Chief?
Well, first off, this is an idea that David brought forth, and so I really want to give David the credit for it. ARU comes about because fire identified the amount of resources, the full truck with all the firemen that had to deploy for these things, and they were looking for more efficient ways of handling that. So it's a good program. For us, we're looking more long-term. We don't see the same immediacy. It's still an officer being dispatched to each of these calls. But over the long run, when we're doing more proactive contacts with inebriates, there's where we're hoping that what we're doing is interrupting what eventually is going to be a man-down call by the end of the night or the next day, but we're having contact with them earlier. And so getting them off to the sobering center before any citizen calls, before it generates that kind of call. So from our perspective, it's the proactive nature of the unit, where it isn't really responding to a lot of dispatches. It responds to man-down calls, yes, but they're out really looking to contact, proactively looking to contact the inebriates that are roaming around still and maybe need a ride down to the sobering center at that stage. So before it gets to a critical stage, we're intervening in it. There's where I think we're going to see our long-term benefit for this. But for now, it is a good program. It's an experimental program. We're just starting to gather the data, so things like what hours, what days of the week, those kind of things we're taking a look at, and we like the way it started.
Well, I think that's what I like about the proactive approach to this. That's something the community, we've been very reactive into dealing with the problem after it has already begun. And so some of the proactive things that we're doing right now through PD, I want to bring Lieutenant Malone into this, is working with local businesses and those who sell alcohol to try and get them on board with us with this idea that if we can maybe limit or make them be, I'm going to say, more responsible as business owners, or but at least Well, I don't know, Casey, tell us. I mean, you lock up the liquor in Walmart, it's going to have an immediate impact on who has access to steal that liquor, right?
Absolutely, and you mentioned Walmart. Well, we reached out to Walmart, and we have, several times over the last several years, and trying to get them to do something. And just, in the last, I think it was October of last year, they secured all of their hard alcohol in both of their stores, making alcohol harder to access at their locations. And what we've seen in response to that is some of our other major retailers are also, at least verbally, have committed to doing the same thing moving forward. And so, the goal is to make alcohol harder to access for that specific group of people that, are committing crimes, that are stealing it.
I mean, there's the people who have the money, who are out there maybe being responsible with the use of it. They're going to find where alcohol is to be sold, and they're going to buy it anyway.
Absolutely.
But it is to those individuals who don't have the resources, and they're in there to try and find somewhere where they can easily access it and steal it and walk out with it, that we have a major issue with.
And, and another element of that is it's against the law to sell alcohol to an intoxicated person. And so the more interaction that this population has with employees at a store when they're trying to purchase alcohol, the better it is, for an employee to recognize, well, hold on a second, I probably shouldn't sell alcohol to this person. That's also a win for us.
So the same thing that's true of what we're doing with ARU and looking at the numbers, that's what the businesses wound up doing with Casey and his unit. So once they started looking at the data and how many, and I forget the last business that just looked at how much shoplifting they had, and they actually looked at the data. Otherwise, they knew the data, but it wasn't something they were focused on. When they actually focused on it, they could see this really is a big problem. So to Walmart's credit, they really kind of led the way. And as Casey said, after they went forward and kind of hardened off access to it, you can still buy it, but it's not as easy to shoplift. Right. Then other businesses started following suit. And so that's been, over the last year, a great success for our district coordinator unit.
Well, I see this collaborative effort that we're talking about. I mean, it's police, it's fire, it's EMS, the JIP program, the sobering center, the hospital, but now we include the businesses into this conversation as well who sell the alcohol. And to me, that's what we really need to get behind as a movement that includes everybody, because it's not just an issue that police has to deal with or fire. There's a human component to this, and we're, as a community, I believe, that cares. Geography dictates where our location is and whether or not there's counties or places around us that don't sell alcohol. And so long as we sell it here, people are going to come here and they're going to abuse it. I mean, that's kind of the reality of the beast. But the things that we can control, which is what I like about this conversation, is we're trying to be proactive. We recognize what we can control, and when businesses get in, we can control that too, so we can help out. One of the areas downtown that has been in discussion for many, many years is the roof. So the roof is our winter shelter. It was built, I believe, when Bill Stanley was mayor, and it was built for the fact that we wanted to make sure that individuals during the winter months, which we're obviously in right now, wouldn't be left out on the street and have no place to go, and we'd end up having to deal with more than just a down subject call. So the roof had existed in the downtown area for years, and just recently we had approval through the city council to relocate that facility out to the sobering center. This has been thought of for a long time, the idea of a campus of care, so to speak, where individuals who are seeking to recover from alcoholism, those individuals who are wanting to find a safe place where they can get away from that environment. We have Total Behavioral Health out there. We have the Sobering Center. We have the JIP program. And now with the roof, what that I think has allowed us to do, based on a ride-along I did last winter when there was nobody in the Sobering Center, but the roof was completely packed. And my conversation with Chris Carlson, our director at the Sobering Center, was, where's everybody at? And she made the point, well, if you don't have to be supervised or medically observed, you're going to go to the place where you're left alone to be drunk. So immediately it became, why are we doubling our efforts and spending money on a program when really we should be working together and saving some money and helping those individuals at the same time. So we've just recently moved the roof. I believe it opens in January, however, so we won't see the impact of that at this time. But that's, again, another part of that proactive approach in my mind of what we can control, let's try and control it to the benefit of the entire community. Downtown has been an important issue on the table, and the renovation of it, complete streets, trying to bring in private investment to the area to kind of reestablish it as a retail hub, an entertainment hub. When you have a shelter located in there, obviously that brings elements to that type of environment that you're looking for that can impact it. But one of the other things that's coming out of this plan is, in the Community Transformation Economic Diversification Fund, is a better security presence in downtown in our park system. Can you guys talk at all yet about that plan? I know it's still yet to come forward, but kind of what the idea is there.
Sure. So what we're looking at is more of just not necessarily armed police officers working these locations, but more of a security detail type position. We're most likely going to do it through our park ranger division, adding additional positions in that unit and hiring more personnel. The idea is to staff Burke Park, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, fluctuating on the front end and the back end of the day based on, time of year and stuff like that. And also the same thing downtown, where we're looking at adding 2 personnel downtown, and their job is just that downtown area, and they're interacting with business owners and making sure the alleys are free of down subjects or people drinking and stuff like that. Just a police department presence in areas where we feel like we need them.
A lot of it's a visible presence down there.
Right.
That citizens know there's someone around, that if they are having a problem, they can get to us quickly, and that we'll be able to call in additional officer resources. But just like fire's trying to do, of limiting the amount of resources they're deploying, we probably are going to staff it through our park rangers. It's more cost effective, and we can hire folks and get them down there in a faster manner than if they had to go through the whole year and a half process to be an officer.
Okay.
So the idea that we've kind of talked through is we recognized which parks within our city we felt like we needed the biggest presence, where we would get the most bang for our buck from having employees. And as part of that, we decided, well, why don't we just consider downtown as a park as well, from that standpoint, and staff it that way and treat it accordingly. This is a place where people can come and hang out and enjoy themselves.
Sure. Well, certainly, just over the last 4 years that I've been in service to this community, and many of you have been here much longer than that, that has been the biggest really concern brought up by business owners in downtown, is the element of individuals who are causing issues in the alleyways and intimidating their customers on the streets. I've taken a different approach as an elected official in how I approach individuals when I see them. I just walk up to them and say hello. And I treat them like a human being, and I don't shy away from them and act afraid of them, because you almost think you're feeding into that mentality by doing it. I think it's an important concept that if we are a community that cares, we recognize that there are 2 parties in this, and certainly individuals who appear to be intoxicated, they can be intimidating. They make you feel unsafe. But I think having additional presence down there is what the community's been asking for a long time, and I'm excited to hear that that's where this is going. So thank you guys both for your work there. The last thing I kind of want to finish on is there are issues in alcohol sales, we'll say, with the state of New Mexico and liquor laws and different things that we can and can't do here as a community. Public intoxication is something that we can't pass an ordinance on to outlaw, so you can be legally drunk in public. But there are things that we can control, and I know that our police department is also trying to work with our legal department to find some other things, some other tools in the toolbox, so to speak, on how we can help in that realm. But to the point, you can be drunk in public, but you can't drink in public.
Can't have an open container of alcohol on you, whether you're drinking from it or not. If the seal's broken, it's illegal to be in possession of it. Inside a vehicle, outside of a vehicle, public property, it doesn't matter. Can't do it.
Okay. And that to me is, and Chief, maybe I'm wrong, but is that not the primary thing that we end up, when it comes to individuals that are busted on the street who are intoxicated, it's because they have an open container? Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
this kind of plays into some of the other issues we've had with the catch and release. So we're taking folks to jail, and we're still doing that, at a pretty regular clip. They're just not being held there as long anymore.
And
It's
this
part
is
of
the pretrial release
the pretrial
issue
release.
that came out in
So things like
2016.
this, the person would be held for 7 to 10 days in days gone by, and that isn't happening now. So it creates this feeling in the public that there's more inebriates out. Well, the truth is they're just out more.
Right.
It's not that there's more inebriates, they're just out more.
Well, they don't have mandatory detox anymore
Right.
for 72 hours. The judge isn't sentencing them right off the bat because they now plead not guilty.
Right.
And they're released
And
for a
then they're
future
released.
trial date,
Yeah.
to which they can now, do other crimes in between then until a warrant goes out because they failed to appear.
Right.
And then they get picked up and then they get sentenced. So
Right.
yeah, so any given day, there's more on the street.
So it's a frustration, to the public, obviously, and we are trying to address that in a couple of ways. But it's also frustrating to the officers, and I'm sure to the firemen and things like that, the other groups that deal with this population. But we like the ability, which came about because of the tax increase, that we're now going to be able to have more officers and more staff, in this case park rangers, that are out and about, visible for the public, that we're going to have more eyes out there, which is oftentimes our problem, is getting enough eyes on them. So again, it'll be something more proactive where we're trying to address the problem before it becomes a problem.
Sure.
And we've actually we're piloting a position in Burke Park where we have one of our park rangers assigned there Wednesday through Saturday, 40 hours a week. He's in Burke Park, and he's, and some of the things he's telling us is he's contacting this population in there. They may not be drinking, yet, but they're definitely, he's making contact with them frequently and checking up on them and things of that nature.
So we'll just kind of end on this note. The other thing that we're working on here as a city is making sure that we're communicating to Santa Fe. Places where we see that we could use their help and assistance in addressing these things. Certainly the pretrial release issue is something we believe Santa Fe can help us fix. When it deals with other potential statutes that would maybe give the cities more ability to act on their own accord and in their own interests. It's not something that's held by Santa Fe that what we can and can't do, so that we can address individual needs, I think is an important component for us being our own community and dealing with our own issues as they come up. So, gentlemen, thank you again for joining me on this segment of the Mayor's Table today to discuss this important community issue, and really thank you guys and your staffs and everybody out there who's working every day for this community in the manner in which you do. It takes a special group of guys and gals, and we are appreciative of that. But is there anything else that we want to add to this segment today, Brandon, that you had in mind?
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us. I also wanted to thank everybody that was involved with this collaborative effort for the ARU, the police and fire departments, the San Juan Regional EMS, the dispatch center, and the folks over at the sobering center at PMS. Everybody worked diligently to try to put this project together, and things are working out well, and we're looking toward a positive future with this ARU, so thank you.
Well, at dispatch, they do such a great job for us, and I know that management in there is constantly trying to improve, so we're definitely thankful for their participation as well.
Absolutely.
Chief Burke, anything else?
No, sir.
Chief Hebbe?
No, thank you, sir.
No, sir.
All right, well, that does it. Well, thank you all for joining us here on this episode of the Mayor's Table. It's not quite Christmas yet, but we definitely want to wish everybody out there a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Please be safe out there, make good decisions, and be sure to stay tuned for the next episode of the Mayor's Table.